One of the great joys I've had in life is the pleasure I've gained from watercolour painting. To appreciate the landscape with the idea of painting it must be one of the greatest pleasures in the world. And one thing I find that painting has done for me, and it does for anybody who picks up this as a hobby, that you start to study the landscape and nature much more closely than you would if you had never painted. You see clouds and you say to yourself, how would I paint those clouds? You see beautiful trees, you see lovely reflections. Now all this is the joys of being a landscape artist, and it's a great experience. Hello, I'm Jack McDonogh and welcome to my studio. The video you're about to see has been made essentially for beginners, and you may say to yourself, he's just been talking about lovely landscapes, why is he in the studio? Well, the point I want to make here very firmly is that the studio is the place where it all starts. It might be your kitchen, might be anywhere, but you cannot paint a complete landscape out in the fields until you've mastered all the techniques required to paint all the parts of a landscape. There's no doubt in my mind about this philosophy of mine where I say you should master the techniques before you go out into the field to paint that landscape you want to do. You should know how to paint trees, how to paint sheds, and all the different parts of a landscape, how to paint the clouds. You shouldn't be worried when you're out in the field by saying to yourself, heavens above, how will I paint that tree? How will I paint that cloud? You should have mastered those techniques in the studio. Now, the expenses involved with painting are a bit high at the start, but it does become a very cheap hobby after a while, because as you keep painting, invariably the only things you'll have to add are more paints and more paper. And you never know, if you sell a painting, and that'll be a great day of joy for you, this will help defray your expenses, and you've got a very, very pleasant hobby. There's one point I want to make very clear to you. The methods I'm going to show you are my methods. They're not necessarily the only method. There are as many methods of painting a watercolour as there are watercolourists. The need for you to practice these techniques is so important. You must practice, practice, practice. I cannot overemphasise the need for you to practice. Now here we go. We're going to start off with an introduction to watercolour painting, and I hope you enjoy it and have a very happy experience. As I said in the introduction, there are as many ways to paint watercolours as there are artists, and the same applies to the paint boxes. Now this particular paint box I'm going to show you is the one that suits me, and I think as a beginner it would probably suit you. Some artists spread their paints around the edge of a big china plate. Others might put a marble tray out and put the colours around. There are dozens of types of paint boxes, for instance, but this particular one I'm going to show you suits me. It's cheap, and generally speaking I can recommend it. Now this is the box that I use. As I might add, I have a new one and it looks very neat and polished. This little part moves out, and I find that very handy too for cleaning it up. You'll notice that the all white surfaces, and when I fold this box up in the summer, when the hot summer days, I like to leave a tissue inside. And the thing about this, that keeps the colours moist, of course. The thing about this, it's a reasonable price. You should get this for about $17. Now there are lots and lots of paint boxes, and some can be very, very expensive, so be careful there. This is the one I recommend, and it does all I need. Now there's the paint box, and there's the colours. Now you'll notice that in this box I have 11 pigments. Now we are doing a series of watercolours, and these are the 11 colours I'm going to use. Now when you go along to the art store to buy your pigments, you must realise that Winsor & Newton, which are the paints I'm going to recommend, produce 84 different colours. Now as you can realise, nobody wants a box with 84 different colours in it. So what you have to do is find out the colours that suit you particularly. Now in my case it's down to 11. Living in the central tablelands, I find these 11 colours have covered all the things I want, and I suggest that as you start with my palette, and then as your experience and knowledge grows, you can change the palette to suit yourself and the particular district and area in which you paint. Now we come to the colours that we're going to put in the box, and the colours I recommend are the Winsor & Newtons. And there are two qualities in these paints, artist quality and student's quality. Now you have to buy the artist quality. They are the top quality and will do all the work that's required of them. Now this is the tube you generally find in most art shops, and this tube is produced by Winsor & Newton with the same artist quality paints, and it contains almost 3 times as much as this tube and works out much cheaper. So if you can find that in an art shop, generally get that size. I find it most economical to use that size. Now we have here the pan. You'll notice in my box, of course, we come to it later, that I have pans. Now what I suggest you do, in the first instance, buy the colours in the pans and then fill them from the tubes as you go on. I prefer the tube colours because they're softer, they're easier to pick up with a brush, and they do the job very well, so I do always use the tube colours. Now let me name the colours in my box, and we have here what are known as the earth colours: raw sienna, raw umber, burnt umber, light red and burnt sienna. Then we move to the blues, and we have Windsor blue, Antwerp blue, cobalt blue. Then we have Payne's grey. Now the two yellows I have cadmium yellow pale and Indian yellow pale. Now those colours will cover us for all the paints, all the paintings we're going to do in the video series. Just 11 colours out of that 84 I mentioned in the first instance.